What's up, agency owners? Today is a special one. This is joined by Brent Weaver, the founder of UGURUS, and we go way back. Now, Brent walks us through how he went from slinging websites in high school to building a seven-figure coaching company for digital agencies. And we're talking scrappy launches, clunky first products, and how $99 courses became a real business. If you've ever built something on the fly or wondered if you're doing this whole agency thing the right way, this episode's going to hit home. Oh, and spoiler alert, this is part one of a two-part deep dive, because what happened after Brent sold UGURUS is a whole different story, and we'll dive into that as well.
Hey, Brent, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks, Jason.
You're retired now.
Yeah, for now, right? That's,
there you go.
Lack of work, not working, sabbatical, retirement. I don't know.
Yeah.
So whatever,
Cool.
However you want to define it, not working.
Well, we'll get into who you are and what you used to do in a second. In the pre-show, I was kind of teasing Brent a little bit, like on Instagram. You all should follow him on Instagram. He's old on a BMX bike and a skateboard. And I love it because I used to do all that. And I was teasing him. I was like, "You done with the ramp yet that he's building in his house?" He's like, "No, I've been too busy." I'm like, "You're the only person that can sell your company and still be busy." I don't understand that. So, but before we get into it, tell us who you are, what you used to do.
Yeah. So my name is Brent Weaver. I founded a couple of companies in the digital agency space. Most recently, UGURUS was a coaching and training company for digital agencies around leads, sales, all that good stuff. And we started that business in 2012 after selling my first web agency. And we actually did just do an end of life of that business end of March 2025. So in between, about 3 years ago, we did sell that business to Cloudways. I stayed on to help kind of run and grow it. Cloudways got bought by DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean, after a couple of years, decided that they did not want to be in the professional services business. And that entailed winding down UGURUS. And we can obviously talk more about that and what happened and how that transpired. But that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean I didn't know you started in 2012. That's awesome. That was a long run, because we started in 14.
Yeah.
And I didn't know you started back then. That's awesome.
We at the agency business, we were building on a tool called Business Catalyst. And in 2009, we launched a blog called BC Gurus for Business Catalyst Gurus. And it was like a side project of the agency, and it turned into a membership site. And we started doing business content for sales and marketing and all that kind of stuff of how to grow a business catalyst agency. We kind of had a thought that, that was growing very quickly. So we kind of thought about this bigger vision of what that training company could be. We spun it off as its own company. We sold the agency. Adobe ended up end of lifing Business Catalyst in I think it finally shut down in 2017, but we saw the writing on the wall. And so we launched what eventually became, UGURUS. Basically was the kind of general, any web agency could buy our sales and marketing training.
Huh.
And so that first course launched in 2013 on the UGURUS.com website, but the actual business and BC Gurus kind of existed well before that.
How'd you come up with the name?
I mean, it was literally Business Catalyst Gurus, right? We needed a place to blog. And so it was the BC Gurus, right? And then we, at the time YouTube was, kind of gaining some traction, right? And so we're well, what if, we didn't want it to be WP Gurus or whatever. We just didn't want to be affiliated with some type of technology. We'd kind of been down that road with Business Catalyst and Adobe. So we just came up with a generic, just took that same BC Gurus name, and we had a lot of branding around this whole guru and you can be a guru idea. And so we looked it up, and actually when we were starting the company, we looked up the domain, and the domain name UGURUS.com happened to be coming up for auction or was actually in auction. The auction was going to end like the next day. And so we were like, oh my gosh, this is like serendipity. So we like, all of a sudden we like bid on this domain and ended up winning the auction.
What'd you get the domain name for?
It actually wasn't that much. I mean, it was like, I think it had expired. And so whatever the registrar, it was like $100 or $200. It wasn't standard registration fee, but the auction didn't get like, it didn't get bid up like crazy, which was helpful.
Well, there wasn't many of us back then. I didn't even exist in 2012.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we did like a live stream. The first time I met you, we did a live stream in 2014 to promote our boot camp. It was the second time we were running our 10K boot camp program. And I think like you and Brennan and I know at least Troy Dean and Brennan Dunn and a couple other people like helped us kind of promote. I think maybe you like came on the live stream or something. You and I did a call after that. And that's kind of where I remember like meeting you. And yeah, I mean, it's, gosh, man, 2014 to 2025. That's 11 years, right? I mean, that's crazy.
It's nuts, right? Like because we started in the middle of 14, just doing a podcast, by accident. Like every business I've ever done has always been by accident.
So just doing like a podcast for agencies and then that,
It wasn't even, look, Brent, it wasn't even a podcast. It was a Google Hangout. So one of my friends that ran an agency in Atlanta just sold his next agency. It was called Engage. And I was like, well, let's get on a Google Hangout. Let's just talk and I'll hit record. We'll see where, maybe I'll put it on YouTube. And so I did that. I did that a couple times. And then a buddy of mine was like, you should start a podcast. I'm like, oh, that's the dumbest thing ever. Right. And he's like, no, you could take all these episodes and create a podcast. I had to look up what a podcast was too. And so I took I think I had like 10 Google Hangouts that were recorded. Just took them, put them on iTunes, and then it just took off from there. It was crazy.
It's almost like when you just like execute on something and sometimes you have the plan before you do it. And sometimes you like just do something and then
I never have the plan.
you learn like you get that feedback, right? And you're like, okay, well, this is something, maybe we can do more of this, right? That kind of experimentation.
I'm always building the plane in the plane.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. You're like, hey.
But that's the thing, right? I think a lot of people, they think it has to be perfect in order to launch it.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that I think you've done, I've done. It's just build it and see what happens. Well, what's the worst that's going to happen? We're going to learn from it. It's going to fail miserably and we'll learn.
We launched our boot camp. I feel like I can speak, very openly about all of the things that we did that like maybe I would do differently now, but like maybe I would have been hesitant to say while we were still running UGURUS. I mean, when we launched boot camp, so our first major we had one successful program called the Web Design Sales Kit. It was a self-paced course. It was a couple $100, and we launched that, and it sold really, really well, right? But like when you're selling something for like $200, and we did some like daily deal sites, kind of AppSumo type stuff, and that was like really successful. It helped us like just drive a ton of customers into our database, and we had to split revenue with them or whatever, but it was really cool. The problem with like a $200 course is like, you have one, you sell 100 units or 200 units, 300, right? And you do that once, right? And then those course buyers, right? You have to have something next for them to buy. Yeah. Otherwise, you don't really have a revenue model, or you have to just keep going out and finding new customers. And it does take a lot of $200 customers to I think at the time we had a 5-person team. And so it was to feed 5 mouths every month, right? And so then we launched boot camp. I was reading Ash Maria's Running Lean, which I still highly recommend that book for anybody that's building a product or building a SaaS for sure. I mean, there's some thinking around that has evolved, but still a great read. And so we built this pitch for, hey, we can help you sell your first $10,000 project. We called it 10K Bootcamp, fittingly. And we spent like a few weeks mapping it out, mostly doing the marketing for it, like building up, doing a launch. We were following at the time like Jeff Walker's PLF framework, and we did this launch for it. We had a video sales letter, and it was like a $2,000 product, right? So we had to sell a lot less of them to be successful. And we had this kind of benchmark of if we have at least 20 people do it, we'll deliver it. If less than 20 people do it, we'll just abandon, we'll refund and kind of go our separate ways. And to get at least 20, we ended up, I think, closer to 30 for that first cohort. But we literally had to put all of our effort into the marketing and sales and like clawing for every single enrollment that we didn't have time to actually build the thing, right? We kind of knew generally what we were going to do, but so we like enrolled, 30 people on this thing. And we had a week from when the cart closed to when our first session was. And I was like, my business partner kept being like, well, when are we going to build the thing? And I'm like, well, that's what that week is for. But until we get enough people on this thing, we're just going to keep like calling, keep emailing, keep trying to find partnerships and stuff. And so then we got the number, and then we turned around and it was like every week we built the next week for boot camp. And the first one was pretty rough, but I was the one that was kind of doing the core delivery, so I could stay up late. I could go above and beyond for customers. If somebody was like even an inkling of unhappiness, like I was on, it wasn't Zoom or Google Meet at the time. It was Adobe Connect, right? That's what we were using for all of our web calls and stuff, which literally we had like a server in the back of the office, and it was like running these Connect rooms. But I'd get on with a customer and I'd be like, all right, hey, I'm going to look at your proposal personally. Like I'll show up to your pitch calls for you, right? Like it was so like, I just knew that if anybody was unhappy with the rough edges, that we could kind of smooth that over by just, going above and beyond with service. So you can I highly recommend the build the plane while you fly.
Well, so the first version of the agency playbook, it was built that way. I was like, I want to build something and where it's a recurring model over 12 months. And I was like, I'll charge $99 for it. I remember launching it, I think in 2015 during some day, like it was like a St. Patty's. It was St. Patty's. And I remember I was like, I'll release a module. I called it a module back then rather than a system. I'll release one a month. So I was like, I just need to stay 1 month ahead.
Oh, and that's plenty of time.
Yeah. And the agency playbook was originally 12 systems. But when I got to like 8, I was like, man, these last 4 months, I'm gonna have to make up shit. Like, because right.
12 months,
so, like, that was
a
the
long
first
time. Yeah.
That was the first version. Then I didn't, I always wanted to market how I wanted to be marketed to, right? Like if I bought a course, I didn't want to have to wait a month for the system 2. I want it all now because I'm going to go through it really quick.
Like
I'm going to take the things I like, don't like. And so then we kind of scrapped that version. And then we came up with the agency playbook 2.0, which was like this 8 system framework and had that for years and years. And, but like, I remember the first version when you were telling me that story, I was like, man, that's exactly how we built the playbook.
I mean, I think one of the things that's really attractive about an agency business and to some extent, like any service business, is that you can kind of collect, you can like make the offer and you can collect the funds and then you can deliver, right? Which is and some people do that in the SaaS world. We'll take like pre-purchases and things like that, or kind of have like, a group of early adopters that are willing to use a product that basically is one notch above worthless. But I think with the service business, you can kind of make a bold promise and have a rough idea of how you're going to deliver that. And you can get that cash flow coming in quickly. And I think it can help people, start a business, from nothing, right? Versus having to build an app or something where you have to hire developers or, pay for some expensive AI tool or whatever. And you've got 6 months of, 6 months of product development runway. Like the idea of a runway and a burn, I think is a lot less necessary with the service business. And certainly for a course or a coaching business, unless you don't have a list or don't have any reach, and then those things have to be solved. So fortunately, when we started UGURUS, we had a little bit of a list from BC Gurus, and that while we were running BC Gurus, we started publishing content. We started giving away my website proposal template, and we did build up a list of about 10,000 emails, and so that did help immensely. So when we launched Bootcamp, it wasn't like, me posting to my 19, social media friends or whatever. We did have like a little bit of a group of interested buyers, which was good.
Yeah. That reminds me too. The first thing we ever sold was our proposal template. We sold this for years and years. Do you want to? I'm embarrassed to admit the name I came up with, and I still have the folder. It's called it was the awesome proposal template. That's what I called it. That's what we sold, right? And it was like that was the name of it. I was like, oh my god! And then,
dude,
ours
was literally it's the $22,850 website proposal. I mean that was our free giveaway, right? The $22,850. And that was, it was like so precise, but it was the literal contract value from like when I went for my web agency, I just went into like my proposal folder. There was 1,000 proposals in there. I grabbed the client proposal and I still remember which client it was. And I was like, oh, this was a good deal. You know, had like a lot going on in it. We were doing a lot of, different kind of upgrades, cross-sell, resell. There was recurring, there was a project, there was multiple locations. And I just stripped out all the client details and started giving that away. I mean, the amount of time I spent creating that lead magnet was like 6 minutes. It was like delete all client information, highlight areas that they can customize,
replace.
And it was like create a new shareable Google Doc version of it. And then I handed it off to my team. And that thing was, before UGURUS shut down, I mean, I have no idea how many times that was downloaded, hundreds of thousands of times, which is interesting, right?
Well, everybody wants to see, like, what we did is we sold it for $99. And I just said, do you want to see the proposal that we used to close LegalZoom and Hitachi and AT&T?
Yeah.
Right. And it
That's
just
$100.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I might even pay $100 for that now, Jason.
You're retired. You can't.
I might need some clients soon, right? Like,
there we go. Yes, that's right. Well, what I would tell you though, because we really don't sell it anymore, just because I'm like, guys, you don't need a proposal.
Yeah.
Right. To win the deal like we used to, if you think about, right, like of all the things that would go into it. Let's talk about, why did you sell the first time? Why did you sell UGURUS?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So, I mean, I think at the time, this was like shortly after COVID, right? So we sold December 2021. About a year before that, I had one of our sponsors and kind of brand partners was Cloudways, and we started to kind of collaborate a lot. I was hosting webinars with them. I became very close from a business mentorships position with their CMO, a guy named Santi Costa. And, we'd kind of meet every few months and talk about collaborations. And I started doing some brand evangelist work for them. And, I think a lot of the coaching space with COVID, not to whatever, we rode that wave out, right? The ups and the downs and sideways. But it kind of it went from this we had this business that had this in-person events, and they were big and exciting, and they'd kind of inject this really great creativity into our business, and all that kind of stuff kind of got put on hold. I just bought out my business partner. And so I went from this very excited to kind of I'm looking for something challenging and adventurous to do, right? I mean, it was this, I wasn't getting maybe what I wanted from the business in certain ways. And I think the more I talked to Santi and saw what they were doing with Cloudways and this amazing community, or this amazing platform they had with 14,000 agencies, we kind of started to dream about what it could look like with, actually turning that into an agency growth community and taking the best parts of UGURUS and injecting that into this very large agency platform that people were using around Cloudways. And it became this joint vision. And, I was like, well, I don't know, how do we do this in a JV sort of way, and that conversation evolved into the CEO of Cloudways, Akib, was like, well, when we first reached out to you to sponsor you, we always kind of thought in the back of our mind that we might acquire you at some point. And so kind of after a year of us collaborating, they broached that subject. And I was like, whoa, okay, well, that's an interesting idea. Let's explore that. And so over the next 6 months, we explored what that vision might look like. And ultimately I was on board for that. And I think for me, I really wanted to work after buying out my business partner. I was kind of solo founder CEO. I found that benefit of being around other growth-minded entrepreneurs, kind of joining something that's bigger than myself and bigger than what UGURUS was. And so that was really like the key motivation. It was like, this looks like a fun and challenging partnership. And so, went through with the acquisition. I had no intentions of leaving the business unit when we got acquired. We were going to take kind of the best parts of UGURUS and bring that stuff into the Cloudways Partner Program for the agencies. And we accomplished a lot of that stuff. I mean, I think, so one of the big curveballs was, 9 months after the acquisition, really 10 months. The acquisition closed in December. I kind of not checked out, but I did kind of take a little bit of time off in December because it was just
which you should, right?
Yeah.
Like we all need a break.
Yeah. And so then like September 1, 2022, and I knew something was happening. I was kind of a part of some of the back office stuff for the DigitalOcean acquisition, but September 1, officially Cloudways got acquired by DigitalOcean. And so, that was a big curveball for me in terms of what that meant for the UGURUS business unit. I mean, we were like, we were enough revenue for Cloudways that we were like a part of the conversation for like leadership and direction. But then, DigitalOcean's an 800+ million ARR company, this little like coaching community, it's like literally a drop in the bucket, right? A drop in the ocean, so to speak, no pun intended. But, I think it became much different. It was like, all right, well, it doesn't really fit the overall thesis of DigitalOcean, their infrastructure, heavy engineering culture, product culture.
So not very kind of personality fit.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, they're thinking about hardcore like AI. How do we provide GPUs to our customers?
Okay.
I mean, if I go to a happy hour, an event, I mean, I'm a nerdy like web person. I can kind of hang with some of the conversations, but like when they go into their actual work product, it's like, okay, I have no idea what you're talking about at this point, right? I mean, heavy duty, like operating system level engineering type stuff. And so I think just over time, it became clear that, we were like this really kind of fun side thing that Akib and Cloudways did, and it wasn't as big of a part of the growth story for DigitalOcean. So they kind of looked at it and said, okay, well, we're going to get rid of, like, once AI became part of the picture, it was like anything that's a distraction to that core mission, we're going to get rid of. And I don't think I necessarily disagreed with that move. I mean, obviously I had an obligation to the overall business, and but also I advocated for our team. I advocated for the business unit, and ultimately that decision, it was out of my hands, right? I mean, it's like you sell something to somebody and it's now theirs, even though I'm there and I'm helping out, right? I mean, ultimately it was their decision, and it was totally, it was, if I was in their position, I probably would have made the same decision.
When the first time when you were about to sell, I remember when we sold the first agency, maybe up until maybe 4 hours before the signing, there are questions in your head of like, do I do this? Do I walk away? Do I have to do it? Like all these things of emotions. And I lost myself for a long time. Like I always tell people, never sell unless you know exactly what you're going to do tomorrow. Yeah. Right? Like,
yeah.
Did you go through that at all? Or you're like, yeah, take it.
Well, I think I did know what I was going to do, at least in that case, right? Because I was, there was this vision. I mean, we spent 6 months creating this plan. Like the day that the acquisition closed, I think it was like around my 40th birthday, I went up with my family, went to this kind of dude ranch for a few days. And I just kind of like we closed on like a Wednesday, and I was like, that weekend we were like out on a dude ranch and like I wasn't paying attention to work at all. But then like come Monday, like I was kind of, at least back at it in terms of having conversations, with the team and stuff like that. Cause obviously, once we announced it internally, they were privy to what was happening. There was some logistic stuff with having to fire people on this day and rehire them immediately after, right? There's some things that happen whenever you sell a business that, you can't, like, it's very hard to keep it a secret, right?
All right, so Brent sells the company, celebrates on a dude ranch, and thinks he's finally going to take a breath. But when Monday hits, things start to shift fast. So in part 2, Brent shares what happens next and the unexpected twist, the corporate culture clashes, and how he ends up joining forces with E2M. You don't want to miss it. Hit subscribe so you catch it for the second it drops. And if the episode brought you some clarity or some good laughs, send it to another agency owner who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep it scrappy and have a swank day.